Okay. We should just also let everyone know that for me, it's 1:52 in the morning.
And
And
it's
for Samantha, it's
11:58.
almost midnight.
Yes.
And we're doing this because this is like the first chance we've had to do this in a week now. We've been trying
And
to
it's
get
quiet for
together.
her and it's quiet for me, so it works out.
Exactly. Okay. So now we're going to get back to karma and how this plays into everyone fulfilling their mission that they signed on for. Um, okay, so I'm just checking that. Okay. They signed on for 18,000 years ago or 15,000, whenever we actually finally came to this agreement. Okay, so we have been given the misinformation that karma is something that we're trying to avoid and get past and not have. We don't want to have karma. We want to get to the point where we have no karma and we can just leave this planet forever. That's the goal. That's not the goal. We first of all, we go through an awful lot to be able to come into this density from a higher density. And so even to begin with, before we come to Earth, we have to go through certain things. Now, I'm going to tell you a story about how I always knew that star seeds were born into human bodies. And I'm sure that I've heard it dozens of times from other people who know the same thing. They just know it. I don't belong on this planet. I have this feeling I come from some other planet, but I'm born as a human and I know I have something I'm supposed to do, and not everyone even knows what they're supposed to do. Um, what's my purpose? We're still trying to figure all of that out because it's going to change with through ascension. But I was remote viewing a planet that was found by the United States military, and it was a remote viewing I was doing with Dave Morehouse, and it was on the Explorer level. And we were sent out to a planet, and I was immediately underground, and I was immediately surrounded by these male energy beings that had long cloaks on, like monks wear, and I couldn't see their faces, but they had these extended, looked like bird beaks that came way out. And they reminded me of the same kind of hats that the Tibetan monks wear. Now, I looked it up and they're different now in the different timelines. In my original timeline, they look like the ones that my Tibetan monks had. And but they literally look like the top half of a bird beak that comes out, and it shrouded and shadowed their face, so I couldn't see it. But the very first thing this particular avian person said to me telepathically, and he was very tall. I mean, very, very, very tall. They were all very tall. Was um, that when they were very, very, very young, and I had the impression it was like a billion years ago, um, they had made mistakes in their youth. So, for example, there was one planet that was riddled with plague, and they didn't want it to infect the rest of the galaxy. And so they destroyed that planet. And he said, and that was a very bad thing to do. We realized we shouldn't do it again. And then he said, and then there was another time when there was a planet where there was a race that was very telepathic, that was imprisoning the people on the planet, and they did so by using telepathy. And so we tried to take out that race. that was doing bad things to the planet below. He said, and we realized that that was a very bad thing to do and we shouldn't have done it. He said, and so after that, we learned that the way to help a planet that's imprisoned and has plagues is to have higher density beings be born as as the indigenous whatever. So he said, as so in your earth, higher beings are born as humans, because that way we get around the non-interference protocols. And hopefully the people that are born in human bodies will actually be able to do their mission. They don't always succeed, but we hope and we do our best to send them strength and courage and whatever it takes to do their mission. And I immediately, I immediately was like, oh, yes, I understand. I understand. It took me 20 years to realize he was talking about Earth. I can be really slow-witted sometimes because I just back then, for one thing, my Earth that I came from was a higher density than this one. And things weren't nowhere near as bad. And we were out on the edge of the galaxy and we were being left alone. And we were, I've seen people who in my timeline, my Earth, were good. And then I've seen them go into a timeline where they were really not good and then come and merge out into this timeline and still be good again. And I've seen the reverse. I've seen ones that they weren't as bad as they are now. They were not good, but they weren't that bad. And then they suddenly descend into hell and now they're horrifically bad in this timeline because this timeline has more darkness.
Mhm.
It has more really nasty mental plagues. And also my timeline as of June 2016 had 5.5 billion people. And one of the things that I was always instructed to do was check the population, check the population. I used to do it regularly, like every 3 months, I would check the population.
You would
And,
tell me when to
and,
check.
and in July, 1 month later, we suddenly had 7.5 billion people. We gained 2 billion people in 30 days. And that is when I realized, oops, and then I was talking about this on a chat group. And literally 2 people said, well, we just arrived and we come from an Earth that had 9.5 billion people. And we were like, wow, what was it like? And they were like, no difference. Maybe a little bit more plastic in the ocean, but that was about it. It's like everything, again, this is programming. We have to reduce the population. We have to reduce the population. I went from 5.5 to 7.5 to 9.5 back to 7.5, all in the span of 3 months. And there was no difference. And I will have to get into the all of these other things that have changed along the way because the geography is so dramatically different. I mean, in my timeline, South America was directly parallel to North America. North America, South America. And the Panama Canal ran basically, let's see from here, east to west. I think that's how it would look from looking at it in
Yes.
reverse.
Okay.
And it was actually a little bit northeast, east, northeast to west. Now, if you look at the Panama Canal, it goes directly north-south. That's a major change. And that is because now it South America is way over halfway across the Atlantic towards Africa.
Mhm.
Anyway, these are
So back.
big,
Yeah.
big differences. But getting back to karma.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so one of the things that we have been taught is that we have to be very good, and not create negative karma, and then use that so that we're so good we can just get off Earth. And look at the caste system and how it got misused in India. I mean, initially, before the Aryans arrived, around somewhere 1500 BC, you could just grow up and be what you wanted to be, and there was no stigma attached to it. You want to be a farmer in this life, be a farmer in this life. You want to be a priest in this life, be a priest. There was equity between everyone. Everyone was equal. And when the Aryans came in, it was like the snake in the Garden of Eden. Suddenly they used reincarnation to control people. If you're bad, you will be reincarnated as a lower caste. But if you obey us and do everything we tell you to do, then we will say that you're good enough to come back and be reborn as a higher caste. I mean, talk about misusing a gift that we all have on this planet. We are a short-lived planet.
Mhm.
We are not alone. Even when we were living to be 300 years, because there's a lot of differences on this planet, there's a lot of radiation. And that's something else that happened. One of the things that really happened in the change from my Earth to this one, first of all, it's a lower density, slightly lower density. And I and one of my roommates, I live with several other people, we both lost 4 inches overnight. And people noticed. People are like, what happened to you? You're used to be here and now you're down there. And I mean, I'm not taking into the fact that, yeah, I lost an inch just because we're old, or I lost an inch and a half because we're old and everything's compressed and all of that. No, that's on top of the 4 inches that we lost. I mean, I've lost like 5.5 inches total. And so did my one other roommate. And that is what happens when you go to a lower density, you get shorter. You go to a higher density, you get taller. That's why we look at Barron Trump and say, my God, he's now 6'9". Guess what he is? He's up there as a higher density being. It's pretty extraordinary. So karma, sorry.
Okay. Yeah. So we're taught that, if we're good, we're gonna be, we're gonna end up.
Leave the planet and not have to be here.
Mhm. And even in Christianity, they say if you're good, you go to heaven.
Right.
Yeah,
And
that's.
and so what that's the same being showed me that told me about the fact that they seed planets with higher density beings, but they have them born as the indigenous whatever, is that when we die, he gave me this image of we literally take off a cloak of all the things we went through in our life, and we free ourselves of it, and then we go through our own mini form of ascension after we die. We go to the density, which is our home, where we belong, that we resonate to where our family is, our star family. And, then we review and we replan. And there are planners on the other side. And this is very important. And I was recently told that in the Law of One, they actually talk about the planners, which I've not read the Law of One, so I had no clue. But I distinctly remember arguing with a planner about what was going to happen in my life, because I'm like, well, I'm not so sure that's going to work out. And it was like, and I was like, okay, fine. We do have a say in it, and we can argue, but usually the planners win out. I can tell you that right now, because they have the whole picture. They're like their own version of the looking glass. The planners see the future, and they see, and they put together everyone's help you with your karma, because the trick is to have your lives go in order so that you build your karma, you control your karma, you create your karma. even if it could be like something like, oh crap, I'm going to go to jail for a life. Everything is built on everything, step by step by step. Some lives are, uh-oh, I did something really bad. That's an inoculation life, so that you will learn not to do that again. We all have our weaknesses. So, um, you might have a weakness, one of the seven deadly sins. You might have a weakness in one of those seven sins. And you're allowed and encouraged to go all out on the life where you really screw up so that you go, oh crap, I'm not going to do that again. The excess brings you back. But most advanced people don't need to do that. I mean, or maybe they do it one life. I mean, usually you have an inoculation life here and there just because the other side, the bad guys, can be so evil.
Some of the younger souls is what I feel you were kind of hinting there. Have those lower ways of living.
Patience,
Like
temptations.
yes, like murdering.
Yeah, or getting angry, like so angry they accidentally kill someone and then, oh crap. It's um these are inoculation lies. Why? Because evil is so good at tempting people, especially the most dangerous form of evil is evil that comes in the form of love. And believe me, there is evil out there that can come in the form of pure, innocent love, nurturing love. I'll give you a safe place. You're going to finally feel like you're safe for the first time in your life. And it's all bullshit. And you don't find out until. Why do you think um, so many people that are so trusting get taken? Because good people are trusting because they can't imagine that someone comes across as good could be evil. It's a shock.
Mhm.
So we have to have these lives that literally are like a ladder where we step by step by step build our karma. In other words, we are the dog wagging the tail. The tail does not wag us. And when we die, we take off the cloak of our karma we have from that life. And then when we're reborn, we put the cloak back on. But now we're reborn into a different family. So not only are we going to have the cloak of the karma we have from our last earth life that we put back on, but now we also are faced with the karma of our family that we've just been born into. And sometimes that karma is really bad. And that needs to be balanced. And we're there to balance that family karma because that is part of the cleaning of the psychic swamp.
Yeah.
And you're immediately given a choice. This is what I was shown by this advanced being. You're put on your cloak and then you're given a choice because now you've put the karma back on again. And you're given a choice of two paths. And one is the path that we might just call Christ consciousness, just for give you an idea. And that's usually a path that you have to have faith and it's uphill and it's not obviously um, fulfilling. It may not be obviously fulfilling when you just may have to make the choice. Whereas the other choice seems easier if you're tired, lazy, it seems easier. If you're it may have a temptation that's drawing you like an addict, and you have to make a decision. And one of the things that this being showed me was the fact that you can always stop. If you've been making the wrong decision for multiple lives, you can stop and change and make the right decision and choose the path towards Christ consciousness. But some people just keep making the wrong decision over and over and over again, and they just keep going downhill, 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 literally towards hell. And one of the things that's really, really important was that Jesus Christ taught what he called the way, in capital letters, the way. Well, what people I don't think understand is that the way is how you handle your karma. How you can actually stay on the path, because it's a journey, and it's how, and the way that you follow the path is usually like following magnetic north. It's like following a magnet where you're pulled, but you need to be pulled by your heart, and you need to be pulled by your heart over your brain, because the brain will want to go off track because of the conditioning we have all around us. And this is where all of those past lives you've had where you've been building karma has come to now help you stay on the right path, particularly now. Because right now, what with ascension happening and all the crazy things happening around us, this is when the bad guys are really active, have all these tools on hand to tempt us, to give us mental plagues, to use 100 monkey theory against us, to tempt us. Like, all those guys are doing it, I guess I should do it too, kind of
There's a lot of
situation.
distractions too.
What's that?
A lot of distractions.
Yes, good point. A lot of distractions,
Mhm.
and keeping focus, and keeping faith, and keeping belief.
Mhm.
um, and not just and belief in oneself, and belief in, and this brings us to hope. This is another thing where we've been conditioned to lose hope as part of losing faith. Most advanced light workers are service to others. We put other people before us. And we know that we also have to take care of ourselves, but our instinct is always to take care of someone else and nurture. Now, if you get to yourself by yourself without anyone to take care of, I mean, imagine when you were a child and you have your parents and you're got yelled at by them, and you're all alone and you're really annoyed and wish that you were grown up and could no longer have to deal with your parents. I've been through that moment. And and you're so alone, and you're just in your body alone. Or I mean, most adults never have this moment anymore. That's the reason why I refer to it as when you're a child. It seems to me that that's like the last time we ever get to be really alone, you know? But when you're totally alone, what we have as a singleton is hope. We don't have to share that with anyone else. We can keep it for ourselves, to give ourselves what we need to go on. It's hope. But hope is like, oh, it's not going to work out. Ah, hope. We have been brainwashed to believe that hope fails. I'm not kidding.
Mhm. That's what causes the procrastination and
Yeah. Good point.
Mhm.
Fear of failure because hope, it always fails.
Yes.
We won't even try.
Mhm.
We lose courage. We lose health.
Yes.
Hope is an essential, but we have to retrain ourselves to know that hope, the hope springs eternal, hope actually can succeed.
Mhm. It does exist.
It does exist. It's there to give you a hand up.
Mhm.
It's there to have the angels hold you in their arms and say, it's okay.
Yes.
You're going to be okay. And we need to learn to follow hope as a positive thing because that's the kernel, that's the smallest unit. And when we are allowed to have it have a positive ending, the door opens. And from that, one has to realize that I know this sounds crazy, but that kernel that's internal to all of us as singletons can give us the strength to all of us start to get our memories back. And karma, following the way, gives us the path we need to take. And sometimes we feel like we've lost our way. We can't see the future. And that's when you have to have faith. And that's when hope springs into action if we're using it properly. And we have been taught not to use it.
Mhm.
And we need to use it when we're blind and can't find our way.
Mhm.
It's because we're alone. Husbands want to take care of their families. They've lost their way. They don't know how to find the money they need. Or a mom, a single mom taking care of her kids. She's just like desperate. We have to have faith. Faith, and Jesus came along and gave everyone hope
Mhm.
and faith. But we ourselves need to remember to learn how to give ourselves hope. And it's just simply changing your mind, just changing, flipping a switch.
Mhm. And as you do that, you'll find yourself able to get things done quicker. That procrastination will fade
Yeah.
away because
And could do things more enjoyably too.
yes, you'll be more present.
And you'll be more expecting of a possibly a positive. And you know what? You can hope blindly because you can just say, I don't know how I'm going to fix this, but I hope that somehow or other it's going to get fixed. And then you leave yourself open to the angelic host helping you. And you should always ask the angelic host for help, by the way. And that also helps you have hope. And you can, if you are someone who loves Jesus Christ, you can ask him or Mother Mary or Mary Magdalene. You can ask all of these entities for help. And you can ask our Father in heaven, a source, creator, for help.
Mhm.
Um, but you have to believe. And the belief comes from the fact that we have to remember that we've been programmed not to hope.
Mhm.
And we have to switch that.
Mhm. We can also ask the angels to raise our vibration and octave. Something.
Yes. Good, good. Yeah.
Mhm.
In fact, we should all be doing that
Yes,
because
daily.
we all are connected to all of our higher selves. It's I remember years and years and years ago, I was talking to Andrew Basciago, who was the person who went to Mars and has all of that stuff about having gone to Mars when he was young. And people should actually listen to his stuff about Mars. It's really interesting and really great. And he said to me that he had this theory that one actually remembers one's experience with ETs go through the crown chakra. Like, think up, and you'll have a memory of having an ET experience. And I thought that was so interesting. I kind of programmed myself to start doing that. And that is when I started to remember stuff. And it takes a while. It's a muscle that has never been developed. And if you think about it, if you're trying to use a muscle in your body that you've never used before, can you do it all right away? No, you have to do it in increments. And you have to put your focus there. But just think about the fact that look at the difference in the way that one remembers your dreams and how you see them versus going to the doctor's office yesterday and where you see that in your mind. Where do you see it? How do you see it? It's different. And dreams can be very different images. How do I remember this dream? Am I feeling it here? Am I feeling it here? You can almost track down where the energy is physically inside your brain. And when you start to realize that different memories just from the physical body can be different, you start to realize that memories from ETs can be different. And I do agree with Andrew Basciago that it's through the crown chakra. Well, that makes sense because you can actually create a light elevator. Now, when we travel with ETs and you go to places like a meeting out in the solar systems, for example, and you go to a meeting out there, they have what they call these light elevators, and you can literally call the elevator and the door opens and you step out into a column of light instead of a floor. Instead of a little room, you step out into a column of light, and it will take you where you need to go, up and down. And I just have to think about that for a minute. I, yeah, I have to think about that for a minute. I'm
You were
sorry.
talking
I
about
just,
memory.
what's that?
You were
Oh,
talking
yeah.
about
Okay.
memory.
So you have a light elevator. Think of it as above your head. And if you go like up through the light elevator, you can actually go through the higher densities of your astral body or your travel body or whatever you want to call it. You can go through your higher densities. You can go to density 9 like that. Density 9 is really great. There are a lot of really intelligent people hanging around in the ninth density. Um, and they're very sweet and actually willing to talk to you. But you go to the 12th density and they're all sitting around being like angels. And um, and the ones that want to come down and help us here are are great, but the ones that want to hang out and stay there in the 12th density, it's kind of like you have to become an angel to be able to talk to them, you know? And then there's the 16th density, which is incredibly crazy because it's where it's all this creativity where you find people composing and writing and choreographing. It's like that seems to be the density where we attach to through our higher selves when we try to get information as to what we want to create here on Earth. Um, it's and we can actually through our mind through this going up we can go to all these different densities.
Mm.
We just have to focus and believe. This is probably the most important thing is believing that you can do it. Oh, I can't do that. Yes, you can. Everyone can. It's called using the other 80% of our brain.
Yes. Because right now we're only using, I think you said 2%.
No, 10 to 20, but I mean it depends on 10% for sure. Well, I
10%.
don't know. Maybe in this timeline it's 2%. I could be in this density only 2%.
Which is Okay, though.
It could be, but yeah, no, technically, I think it's 10% they say, but I swear to God, I think that there are certain people that use up to 20%. But yeah, I mean, I'm sorry, but there's all the rest of our missing brain. But that goes back to the fact that that's what we were trying to create with our 12 strands of DNA, was using a lot more of our brains. And we had to bring it all down. It's like a art of war, Sun Tzu. We had to hide to protect
Mhm.
that which was sacred. And our relationships with people were sacred. Our relationships with the Creator was sacred. I have to tell you, like 99.999% of humans are good people, pure, loving, good people. That's why the MK Ultra is just so heinous, because it's literally trying to shatter good people. For what? Just insane, psychotic cruelty. And the other problem is that it's so difficult for those people who are good people to even acknowledge that that kind of evil exists. It is so difficult. And this is again something that an advanced light worker has a better chance of understanding. In fact, one of the things that we have to do before we even begin to come to Earth and this density is that I know that in the Pleiades there's one, and I know that in some of the other systems there are also schools there, but there is literally a series of classes you have to take about being on Earth before you can even come here. You have to learn to, because you're going to be in a human body, and especially after we lost our telepathy, this became incredibly important. You have to learn, like, if someone is cruel to an animal, you have to learn how to recognize the fact that that person is mentally ill. You have to immediately call the angelic host for help, or you have to become an angel, and you have to assist the spirit of the animal immediately. Instead of panicking or going, oh, I can't handle this. I can't take the pain. I can't take the pain. I can't take this horrible, cruel world. You have to learn how to instantly be responsible to deal with it and not panic and not freak and not get scared, but deal with it. Assess the situation and do the best you can. And then you have to survive. And there are classes that you take to deal with this. And I remember meeting a woman one time, and she was aware of the fact that she had not been trained before she came into a human body. She thought that because she was spiritually advanced, that she could just come into a human body and she would be fine. And I met her. She was going to see the same doctor I was going to see. This was after one of my car accidents. This is the one where I got hit from behind at 80 miles per hour and I lost my memory. And for a while, thank God I got it back. And that was probably another reason why I had to have that training, because it was through the training that I had had when I was a child that I was able to get all my memory back again. Um, but I met this young woman, and she was a chain smoker. And I remember saying, that's why and she said, I want to die. I want to get cancer throughout my body. I made a mistake. I didn't do what I needed to do to come here. I just thought I could do it. I thought I could just come to Earth and do what I needed to do as a light worker, and I was wrong. I didn't have the training I needed. She said, and now I want out. Well, a year later, she was dead from cancer throughout her whole body. And I really liked her,
That's wild.
but you know, that was her journey. And she was a really beautiful soul and highly sensitive, but she just couldn't take the pain, the emotional pain of being here. She hadn't prepared for it. And see, this is another reason why we have the lives we have where we're controlling our karma, because it's how we can get to now and do what we have to do and take responsibility and not be scared and not freak. It's like listening to these young women, and so far I've only heard from the young women who have been trafficked. And I don't want to talk about it too much because I don't know what, we don't want this taken down as a video. But we have to have the strength to understand how thoroughly these children and adults have been hurt, and and not just go after the perpetrators, but remember the victims. And it's the victims that's really hard for us to, because it's so, that's where the pain really is. And that's where we have to be incredibly responsible to nurture them, support them, and protect them and fight the bad guys. And that is all of us who are light workers. This is a main thing we have to focus on now. And our work is just beginning with this election. Our work is just beginning. And we've all been prepared for it. And part of it is, yes, we'd all like to know our purpose. Yes, we'd all like to get our telepathy back. Yes, we'd like to do all of that. That's self-evident. But then what? The point is we need to use it. And we need to use it for good.
Mhm.
I guess, well, I think that's it for karma.
Yes. Mhm.
Um, I can't think of anything else that I could say about it. I mean, I do want to go back and explain what happened to all of the different, uh, or some of the different people that we had to go through in those 3,000 years. But that can be another video.
I also thought to mention that, we see a lot of people who are in relationships for a couple months or a few months, maybe a year, and then it ends. And I think in a lot of ways, that's when people are finishing karma with an individual that they didn't
Yes,
in a past life.
excellent point. Yes, especially now when we're going to be going through ascension, we, for ourselves, want to say goodbye to certain people. And I think some of it is saying goodbye
Yes, I agree. Hmm.
or saying, oops, I did you wrong. Let me fix it.
Hmm.
Or, oops, you did me wrong. Let's fix it.
Yeah. And we also realize that some of the people that we have encountered do not serve our highest good. And we learn that real quickly. I would say we learn it now than we did then. Um, it,
Yeah, so that we can actually be free of it and be stronger. And,
yes. Hmm.
you know, Taoism also taught the way. This isn't just from Jesus. This came long before in Taoism.
Yeah.
And interestingly, Taoism was a trinity, and it predicted that there would be a trinity religion that would be in the West later on. And that was Christianity, which was necessary for the West to survive. Whether you're a Christian or not, it doesn't matter. And the original Muslim church was actually much more allied with Christianity. It was very, very different to start with. And of course, if we get into the elves and what happened with their DNA, I can tell you where it went in three different directions. You see the elves in China, in particular, the Chinese that have pointy ears and extremely long fingers. That's elven DNA.
Mm.
And as you pointed out to me a year or so ago, in Ireland, you find a bunch of people that have pointy ears too. And that's where we have the leprechauns and actually there is, according to, I think it's James Rink, there's a now I don't know if this is true or not, but I really hope it's true. He says that, you remember in Star Trek, Mr. Spock comes from Vulcan? Well, he says that Vulcan actually is hidden in our sun, which I think would be the coolest thing in the world. I know that our sun is alive. I know that it's a portal. I know that it's changing. And I also know that it's a record keeper. It actually loves all of us on Earth and all the other planets. And it actually knows the sun actually is a witness to who we all are. It's interesting. This amazing living creature. But he says that Vulcan is inside, and inside Vulcan are elves that are about 4 feet tall. And I was thinking, well, there we have the leprechauns, because the one of the elven DNA went to Ireland, and that's where we have the whole leprechaun thing. And then, and this is something that I really have to get into, but a lot of the elven DNA went to the original Jews. And the reason why the Irish were looked down upon, the Jews were looked down upon, and the Chinese not really looked down upon, except maybe unless within their own society, which I don't know enough about. But I do know Western world, and I know that the Irish were looked down on terribly, and the Jews were looked down on terribly. And they have elven DNA in them. And what was the battle that happened 18,000, 17,000, between 18 and 17,000 years ago? The battle between the tall greys and the elves. So carrying forward, they sense that the diaspora of the genetic material, they know that the elven blood ended up because by this time they know that the elven DNA hybridized into these groups. So of course they were ostracized and they were made to be propagandized to be less by the tall greys and the evil beings that control this earth, because they hate the elves. And think about it. Think about our programming. Instead of saying Hitler put X number of Jews in a concentration camp, which he did, I don't care what the number is. If we had 200 people who happened to vote for someone and put into a concentration camp, not because they were treasonous or anything, but just simply because they voted for someone that someone else didn't like, we would be up in arms. And I'm sorry, but there are extremely good people who are Irish And there are extremely good people who are Chinese, and there are extremely good people who are Jews. And just because the Jews have been infiltrated to the extreme by evil to try to completely rip them apart and take them down. But just imagine if we were to say Hitler put X number of elves into a concentration camp
Yeah.
instead of X number of Jews into a concentration camp.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. See, it
There
reminds
goes
me,
our programming.
yeah, the Dracos. The
There
Draco.
goes our programming.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And think about it. What is one of the baselines of the Jewish people? They have carried forward, like what Velikovsky talked about, they have carried forward Passover, which, according to Velikovsky, was when we had the sun sort of go and stop and then change direction because of what was happening in the outer space around it. And I'm not going to get into this. You'd have to read his book, like Planets in Collision and things like that. And Velikovsky was so much smarter than, and he was destroyed. You should read a book by his daughter about how Carl Sagan literally did everything he could to destroy Velikovsky.
We could
Anyway,
probably finish this. This is probably about complete. Would you say?
oh, okay. All right, so let me just round this up.
Okay.
Yeah, the Jews have science. You have your many of the physicists, doctors, dentists, um, people with scientific knowledge of one sort or another tends to be part of their background, but it's also part of their religious beliefs. They carried forward knowledge of scientific things that happened and turned them into uh, days that they take note of, like Passover and things like that. That was something that physically happened to the planet. And to remember it, as like scientists, they turned it into something that's part of their religion. And we have to note that there were different kinds of elves back then. There were, like, as Tolkien wrote about, wood elves and, you know, different kinds of elves of, but there were elves of commerce and there were elves of higher scientific exploration. Um, and all of those genes have been passed down. And that's just, I think that people should think about that. Just remember, just change the words in your head. Hitler put elves into concentration camps.
Mhm. Interesting is they're very intelligent people
Yeah,
too.
yeah. As part of their DNA
Mhm.
is the brilliance. Anyway, all right, we'll end it here.
Thank you, everyone.
Yep. Yep. Try to end it.